All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to draw a straight line from a 17th century astronomer on trial for his life to the guy who put a Starbucks on every single corner. I know, it sounds a little crazy, but trust me, by the end of this, you'll see how they both unlock the secret to brilliant strategy. And it all starts in a courtroom in Rome. So picture this. It's 1633, and Galileo is on trial. Now, you gotta understand, his crime wasn't really about saying the Earth goes around the sun. No, his real heresy, the thing that was so dangerous, was that he was challenging the entire way people thought. He was attacking the idea that we already knew everything worth knowing. Instead, he just looked. He dared to observe the world as it actually was, not as everyone believed it was supposed to be.
So, what on earth does a 400-year-old heresy trial have to do with how you run your business today, or lead your team, or figure out your next big move? Well, as it turns out, the answer is pretty much everything.
See, Galileo's whole revolution really boils down to two totally different ways of thinking. The old way, the way of the authorities, was deduction. You start with the rules you already know, like the Earth is the center of everything, and then you work backwards from there. Now, deduction is fine, but it only works if you already know all the important stuff. Galileo came along and championed the hypothesis. He started with an anomaly, an observation that just didn't fit the rules, and he formed an educated, testable guess to explain what was really going on. And right there, that is the exact same leap we have to make in strategy. A really powerful strategy isn't a deduction from last quarter's report or what your competitor did last year. That's just driving by looking in the rearview mirror. A good strategy is a hypothesis about the future. It is your best, most insightful guess about how the world is changing and how you can win in it. Okay, so how does this actually work in the real world? Let's fast forward a few hundred years from 17th century Italy to America in the 1980s, and let's meet a modern-day scientist of strategy. Meet Howard Schultz. Now, for a second, I want you to forget about him as the CEO of Starbucks. Think of him as a scientist who noticed something weird, an anomaly. He'd travel to Italy and see this incredible, vibrant social culture built around amazing espresso bars. Then he'd come home to America, where people were just drinking this weak, bitter coffee, mostly made from cheaper beans. It was just fuel. So he asked the question, why the huge difference? And based on that anomaly, Schultz formed a really bold hypothesis. It went completely against what everyone in the American market believed. He made a guess that he could take that whole Italian espresso experience, the community, the quality, the craft, and recreate it in the United States. And that people, who had never seen anything like it, wouldn't just try it, they'd fall in love with it. But here's the crucial part. He didn't just bet the entire company on his hunch. No, he was a scientist. He ran an experiment. He opened one single shop called Il Giornal to test his idea. This place wasn't just a store, it was a living laboratory. By watching real customers, he got this priceless, privileged information that no focus group could ever give him. He learned, he adapted, and he proved his hypothesis was correct before he scaled it into the global giant we know today. You see, this process, observing an anomaly, forming a hypothesis, and then running an experiment, it isn't just a one-off great story. It's actually a repeatable framework. And in the world of strategy, it has a name, the kernel. Any good strategy, any real strategy, has these three parts. First, you have a diagnosis. This is where you get brutally honest and figure out what's really going on here. You cut through all the complexity. Second, you create a guiding policy. This is your big idea, your overall approach. It's your core hypothesis. For Schultz, it was recreate the Italian espresso experience. And third, you need coherent actions. These aren't just a random to-do list. They are the specific, coordinated moves that make up your experiment, like Schultz opening that one single test store. So, if that's what good scientific strategy looks like, what about the flip side? What makes a strategy, just plain bad? Well, the difference is pretty stark. Good strategy is a hypothesis, and it's grounded in evidence. It forces you to make hard choices and focus your energy. Bad strategy, on the other hand, is just
fluff. It's buzzwords like customer-centric intermediation, which is just a fancy way of saying we're a bank. It confuses a goal, like increase sales by 20%, with an actual strategy for how you're going to do it. But most of all, bad strategy is just a list of wishes that actively avoids making any difficult choices at all.
And believe me, this unscientific approach has very, very real costs. This number right here, that's over $3 billion. That is the amount of money International Harvester lost in just 6 years after they rolled out a strategic plan that was nothing more than a bunch of pretty charts and a wish list. It had no diagnosis of the real problem, no guiding hypothesis, and zero coherent action. It was a total failure of strategy because it was a failure of science. So why do we see so much bad strategy out there? It really comes down to this simple, kind of painful truth. Bad strategy isn't usually born from a mistake in a spreadsheet. It happens because it's the path of least resistance. It's the active avoidance of the hard, rigorous, scientific work that creating a good strategy actually requires. It's just easier to write down a list of goals than it is to form a real hypothesis and have the guts to actually test it.
Because in the end, thinking like a great strategist is thinking like a great scientist. It's about having the curiosity to find the anomaly, the insight to form a hypothesis, and the courage to design the experiment, which really just leaves one final question for you. If your strategy is a hypothesis, what's your experiment?